Good evening and salutations. Oh, Christina, Jesus Christ. Huh. I always knew that the character was a bit erratic, and I get that. And, she has this, she gets her temper from her dad, in a sense, right? Emotionally fueled, right? Because you look at it, Christina is more of a byproduct. She has a lot of similarities to Sunny, just like Molly has a lot of similarities to Alexis. So she is banging on a door, on Ava's door, like a damn nut job, right? And Rick is like, listen, me and Alexis just broke us in peace. I can't be seen with you pretty much. So he hides in the room. She comes in there, and she just starts going off. Ava makes, well, let's be honest, an insensitive joke about her being pushed out the window or her fall out the window and, the unaliving of that child. I'm not going to sit there and say her child because in a lot of ways, well, that was supposed to be Molly's child. But she says that Christina goes off. And then Christina's like, you're not going to sit there and take, Avery from my dad and everything like that. You're not going to do that. And she's just going off, right? And Ava, okay, so in a sense, Ava does something that I would do in a sense, right? Okay, so if you've been to my streams or whatever, you know that I can be a dick, right? And I can sit there and really pull on someone's strings in like a negative way, especially if I see somebody that's already kind of upset about me about something particular. I'm just gonna sit there and keep poking and poking and poking and poking and poking. Okay, it's not a good trait, and it's not something that I should generally be proud of. But like when I saw Ava do it, being like, oh, I may have to sit there and tell the chorus, and then, his enemies will sit there and find out, and that'll be a bad thing. Like, just to really kind of push her buttons, right? Because when she opened, this chick just blazed right through her, and I'm like, did you just walk in her place uninvited? Did you really just do that? So Ava, like I said, Ava did something that I would probably do, depending if I didn't like somebody, So they're going back and forth, back and forth. Christina threatens Ava and leaves, and Rick and Ava are talking. It's like, did you hear that? And she just threatened me. So now I can use that against the court. Now I can use that against Sonny and win full custody and get some money, too. Some money that that Avery's accustomed to. I'm like, I really wish you would stop saying that. But Rick is like, yo, listen, Sonny is most dangerous when his back is against the wall, right? So that's going on. Christina is leaving. She's having not a panic attack, but she's just fuming. She sees Ava Jerome's car, and she sees some, tools. We already know where this is gonna go. I was like, so seems like she cut her brakes. And she gets back, to Charlie's and she tells Lucky, like, oh, I made a mistake. And Lucky's like, well, what did you do? But I'm gonna fix it. You made a mistake. Now we saw the previews. You saw the last end of the episode, you know where this is gonna go. Right? Interesting title for tonight. I mean, I didn't finish watching the other two soap operas, but I'm already cooking up an interesting live stream title for tonight. But yeah, she just, again, what happened to the therapy that she was supposed to get? What happened to that? Sasha, long story short, is pretty much kind of convincing Maxie to work with Sitwell, saying enough time has passed, and just really kind of like being like, I didn't mean to cause any, friction. This is your livelihood and everything like that. And if you need to work with Sitwell, I totally understand it. And long story short, she seems like she's like, okay, well, give me a lot to think about. I'm kind of just like, well, what did you really have to think about? Like, well, basically, she was like, it wasn't Sitwell so much as it was Holly. Holly put me in that predicament, and I kind of over exaggerated a little bit. Oh, you over exaggerated. You took money from your kidnap. I can't with Sasha. I really can't. Um, so now we got the big thing that's going on. The second part of the storyline that's going on, where you have Esmer Boyle. I always mess up on his name. That's the reason why I don't sit there and talk about the other Flash that happened. You know what I'm talking about. Esmer Boyle or whatever his name is. He comes in and long story short, he's ready to tear that crypt down. He wants that thing down like yesterday. He tries to send the papers or whatever. And of course, Emma's like, listen, just stall. That's exactly what they do. They stall, they bring out their phones, which is actually pretty interesting because it's like, I always sit there and give Beyond the Gates props for being more modern and stuff like that, right? And sometimes I even sit there and think about when I'm watching Days of Our Lives and I'm watching them read a newspaper on their tablet. Hell, Ava's done that a couple of times, right? I'll actually tell you the truth, both Ava's, Jerome and Vitaly, I think her name is. And it's just amazing, like years ago when I was watching it, back in the year 2000, they would have had newspapers, right? They would have had newspapers and everything like that, and now they're on their tablets. So now you have, Geo and you have Trina, stumping this guy with different questions. There's one point where I think the demolition guy, whatever, decides to leave, right? I think he decides to leave. Or did he come back? I know he left, but I don't remember if he came back. Meanwhile, while Liz and um, Tracy is there talking about Monica and talking about Drew and his latest actions of what he did. The nefarious Drew. Well, that's going on. Which, okay, I kind of glossed over it, but let me just say this. Clearly, what Drew's doing is wrong, right? Because I'm like, here's the thing. In Drew's eyes, those are technically his family members. Lila, Edward, Alan, AJ, and anybody else who I missed. By the way, was Justin Ward there? Because they consider him to be like the quarterback. But the point is, with Drew is out of sight, out of mind, right? He never met those people. And before anyone sits there and says Oscar, I think his ashes was spreaded across Kilimanjaro. I think so. Besides that, it's like he doesn't really have a connection to those people. What he's doing is bad. Like that's just wrong on so many levels. What Tracy's doing is petty and is stupid, right? It's petty and it's stupid. Because let's be honest, you're not simply trying to protect the family name. That family name was in a lot of ways tarnished even before Drew Kane was a character on the show. So we're not going to do that. But at some point, I forgot the Yuri calls Tracy. Tracy comes down there. Emma decides to chain herself up to the crypt at that point, like to the door of the crypt. And I don't know. I mean, here's the thing. I'm all for peaceful protesting. My issue is when people start doing things like what she's doing. Because I did a video. You can go back to it. I think it's called When Protesting Goes Wrong. That video was funny. But essentially, they kind of did the same thing. Where they were like blocking the road and stuff like that from these people trying to go about their day, go about work and stuff like that. And so when I see stuff like that, when I see what she's doing, I'm like, I get it. It's a good cause and everything like that. And granted, it's not, this time it's only impacting, the crooked councilman and, the cops and everything like that. But I don't know. When I see stuff like that and I see her do things like that, it's like she is the type of person that I would see in the video that I made. So I'm kind of just like, I'm gonna let it slide today, but yeah. So Tracy gets there. Trina gets out her phone and everything like that, and Tracy's not there saying, at first they're going back and forth between her and the other councilman or whatever, and they do this whole thing like they're all kind of like standing by each other in solidarity and stuff, and it's a nice little image. I would sit there and say, Emma is really doing this also for Edward. We know what up happening with that. Um, well, she's so protective of his resting place and stuff. So everyone's standing there, and Gio winds up calling Anna. Anna gets like literally 2 minutes of screen time before Anna's like looks at the paper, is like, "Hey, listen, get the ball cutters. The law's the law." There's and Emma's like, "You're siding with them. You called the police commissioner. I'm sorry. Do you want her to not have a job at the end of this whole thing? Because that's what's going to wind up happening. I mean, it's very questionable she should have the job to begin with, but now in the future episode or the next episode, she's going to get into her little temper tantrum, like, I can't believe you did this. Blah 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 blah. I'm all in my feelings. Um, Sunny, Sunny and Jason are talking about what they're going to do when they get down there. And one of the things that was kind of concerning was, Sonny talking about how, he wants Jason to go one place and he can go somebody else. And it's like, Jason's had that look like, see, this is exactly why I did not want to bring your ass. Because you're just going to be a liability. Long story short, Sonny does get to Stilinski first. And pretty much it's like, listen, you're going to have to give me a name. You're going to have to give me a name. So he drops the gun, tries to look for the other gun. That's not there. He tries to run out the door. Jason's there. He's like, you have to give me a name. Now the guy is like, if I do this, they'll kill me. Sonny's like, if you don't do this, then I'll kill you. The only difference is, I'm going to give you more of a sporting chance. I don't know if they will, but I could just do this right here now. They're kind of off in the standoff. Now, Rick was sitting up there talking to Ava, and one of the things that Ava brought up was that maybe, Liz actually having all this access to what Portia did, and, Liz being about the hospital, she feels that she's going to be more about the hospital than about saving Portia. And Rick is sitting there arguing with her back and forth. Liz comes there, because she called Rick or whatever. She comes there and gives him the papers and everything. Now, remember those brake lines that was cut by Ava's car? Guess who has to sit there and drive in that car? Rick and Ava. I mean, Rick and Liz. So they're in the car. And there's a point where I guess the conversation with Ava really started to make him think like, is she there about to protect my client? Is she there about to protect her friend? Or is she there really about to sit there and protect the hospital? Because remember, one of the things she was sitting there saying with Lucas was, we got to find out. I mean, at the very least for the hospital. I remember that specifically because I was like, you're trying to convince yourself to find out what it is, what information that Brad knows. They're arguing. He can't stop the car, and of course they want to crash it. So that happens. Now the last scene, because hospital got to just cram so many goddamn people. The The last thing that happens, um, of course, is Drew and Kai, right? Drew's not there telling him about all these different speeches that wind up happening, and also brings up, you know, his football, because one of the things that Kai's like, I don't know if people want to sit there and hear from me because I don't play football anymore. Like his relevancy is going to be gone. Drew's like, what if there's a way that, if you can play safely, that can happen. Like he pretty much like I know a lot of different doctors and stuff like that. I even pay for the surgery. Now Kai is a little kind of apprehensive because talk with Trina. More importantly, talk with Curtis. So Drew gives him his point of view, right? Now we can all sit there and look at the stuff between Drew and Curtis. You can sit there and pick a side. You can make up your mind or whatever. But see, I've always been a person that has tried to look at things from both perspectives. Doesn't mean I'm always going to agree with both of them, or I may take one side over the other, but I always feel like it's very valuable to sit there and at least get both sides of an argument, whatever the situation is. And that's what Drew does. He gives him his point, his perspective, which I'm going to be honest, he said that he left some stuff out because, confidentiality. But I'm like, one of the things he could have said was, listen, he didn't have the sweet experience to be, manager in a sense. Like they wanted somebody that had experience being a CEO and everything, and he didn't have it. I think the problem is that it definitely would have been a good look. You didn't promise him it, but you strung him along, right? And on Curtis' part, bro, he didn't sit there and put everything in writing. You just assumed that he was going to make you CEO or CEO or whatever of the company. Mine is, if you did your damn Googles, you would know that you don't have CEO expertise. And that's exactly what Michael said. Michael said that to him. Michael was like, he's never going to sit there and pick you. You don't have CEO experience. Now, I would have been pissed off. I would have been hurt from a friendship standpoint that I felt like I was led astray, right? But yes, on a different level, I think if you would have sat there and told him even some of it, because that's the thing now. When you sit there and you tell a story and you don't sit there and you omit certain things that you know is going to make you look bad or whatever, or make your side, your case is not going to look as strong, it's kind of telling, right? I do think that Curtis did take things a little bit too far. If I'm going to be honest, like I just would have walked away, because nothing was ever set in stone. Nothing was ever was written out or anything like that. There was no paper signing snippet saying that he was promised to get that. And Drew did not actually sit there and say, I promise you that you're going to get that job. Right? So the stuff that Curtis was doing was definitely over the top. But, Drew is not exactly innocent in either. And I think that sometimes when you F up or whatever, sometimes certain people kind of omit certain things that make them look worse than what they are in that situation. I feel like that's pretty much about it. I can't help it. It's always like 19, 20 something minutes because. Now, I guess I still got two more soap operas to sit there and watch. I will definitely sit there and try to do a live stream tonight. It may be pushed back like 15 minutes, whatever, give or take, because. That's what happens when you call a cable company and they come in to sit there and do a simple installation and somehow manage to make it worse. Mm-hmm. Yep, that's right. It was one point I didn't actually even have Wi-Fi. I'm like, well, my modem was actually working fine. Yeah, we have a better modem, and then it doesn't work, and then I'm without Wi-Fi for like about 2 hours. Yeah. I mean, it could have been all night, but anyway, um, check the bleh, check the community tab. I'll sit there and let people know when I'm doing the live stream. Live stream is definitely going to be on. It's just going to be pushed back a little bit, if anything. But check the community tab, and yeah, I'll see you in the next video.